Welcome to our channel, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any new videos. Stoic is derived from the Greek word stoa, meaning porch. They believe that emotions like anger and fear are obstacles to living a virtuous life and that one should always strive for wisdom and self-control. You see, unlike Epictetus, another school of thought in ancient Greece whose philosophy centered around pleasure, the Stoics did not focus on happiness as an end in itself. Instead, they wanted to be indifferent to external factors and focus on internal wisdom and self-control. This involved imagining the worst-case scenario and preparing yourself mentally for any eventuality. By confronting our fears head-on and visualizing the worst-case scenario, we can reduce their power over us and become more resilient in the face of adversity. For example, let's say you have a big presentation at work coming up. It's not things that upset us, it's our opinions about those things. What this means is that it's not the events that happen in our lives that cause us distress, but rather our interpretation of those events. For example, let's say you lose your job. All that we will be is the result of what we do now. This proverb teaches us that our past experiences have shaped who we are today. Our upbringing, our education, our relationships, and everything we've learned and experienced has contributed to making us the people we are. However, it also reminds us that our future is in our hands. We have the power to shape who we will be in the future based on the actions we take today. Every decision we make, every action we take, and every habit we cultivate will contribute to creating the person we will become. So it's important to be mindful of our habits and actions and to ensure that they align with the kind of person we want to be in the future. If we want to be kind, compassionate, and empathetic, then we need to practice kindness, compassion, and empathy in our everyday lives. If we want to be successful, driven, and disciplined, we need to cultivate success, drive, and discipline in our daily actions. Ultimately, we are the architects of our own future. On the surface, this is a negative event. However, you could choose to interpret it in a positive light. We want to look back and feel a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction with the way we lived. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss out on any new content. And if you're still hungry for more, we handpicked this video for you to watch next, or check out our channel for more amazing content. See you tomorrow. This is where the Stoics' emphasis on living in accordance with nature and focusing on what we can control comes into play. By embracing the things we cannot change and focusing our energy on the things we can control, we can live a life that is both meaningful and fulfilling. We can be proud of who we are and the impact we had on the world. So the next time you find yourself stressed or overwhelmed by the challenges of life, take a step back and ask yourself, what can I control and what do I need to let go of? By doing so, you'll be able to find peace and clarity in even the most difficult of situations. Maybe you've been unhappy at your job for a while, and losing it is a sign that you need to make a change in your career. Maybe it's an opportunity for you to start your own business or pursue a different field altogether. The key is to remember that it's not the event itself that causes distress, but rather our interpretation of the event. By choosing to focus on the positive aspects of a situation, we can turn a negative event into a catalyst for growth and change. Instead of letting anxiety and fear of failure paralyze you, take some time to visualize the worst-case scenario. Write down all the things that could go wrong and the potential consequences. But it wasn't until I read the book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, the last emperor of Rome, that I fully grasped the depth of this saying. In his personal journal, written over 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything that is born is also destroyed." He goes on to elaborate that everything in life is subject to change and nothing is permanent. No matter how powerful or successful you are, no matter how much money or fame you have, it's all temporary. But this is not something to be feared. In fact, Marcus Aurelius argues that it should be embraced. He says, what does not benefit the hive does not benefit the bee. This means that what doesn't benefit the whole should not be valued. We should not cling to things that are not meant to last forever because holding on to them only causes pain and suffering. By thinking about all the possible negative outcomes, you can prepare yourself mentally for any eventuality. You may even find that some of your worst fears are not as big of a deal as you imagined. And by writing them down, you'll be able to see them more clearly and objectively. This can help you to reduce the impact of negative emotions like anxiety and fear. Imagine forgetting everything and looking foolish in front of your colleagues and clients. Then ask yourself what the real consequences would be if this happened. Would it ruin your career? Most likely not. In fact, there's a good chance that people would be understanding and forgiving. By visualizing the worst-case scenario and realizing that it's not as bad as you imagined, you can calm your nerves and focus on delivering a great presentation. They believed that true happiness came from within and could only be achieved through a life of virtue and independence from external factors. But they believed that we should be selective about which emotions we allow to control us. Anger and fear are two emotions that they believed were particularly dangerous. Anger can cause us to act irrationally and harm others, while fear can paralyze us and prevent us from taking action. That's why the Stoics practiced a form of meditation called negative visualization, which involved imagining the worst-case scenario and preparing yourself mentally for any eventuality. By confronting our fears head-on, we can reduce their power over us and become more resilient in the face of adversity. But they also believed that emotions like joy and love were important and should be embraced. The key, according to the Stoics, was to be in control of our emotions rather than being controlled by them. The Stoics were a group of philosophers who spent most of their time hanging out on the porch of the Temple of Athena at the southwest corner of the Acropolis in Athens. As he lies on the ground mortally wounded, he looks up at the sky and says, "My name is Maximus. My father was a farmer." In this scene, Maximus is practicing a form of negative visualization. He is focusing on the things that he cannot change, his impending death, and accepting them calmly. At the same time, he is also focusing on the things that he can change, such as the way he responds to his situation and whether or not he allows it to define him. He chooses to respond with dignity and acceptance rather than anger and fear. This is an example of negative visualization in action. By focusing on what he cannot change and accepting it calmly, Maximus is able to find a measure of peace in his final moments. This was around 300 BC. They argued that these emotions are often irrational and can lead to bad decisions. In today's world, we are constantly bombarded with things that provoke our emotions, whether it's news about the pandemic or political turmoil. However, the Stoics taught us to remain calm and rational in the face of adversity. They believed that by controlling our emotions, we could achieve inner peace and happiness, no matter what was happening around us. If you type in Stoic on YouTube or Google, you will find thousands of results about Stoicism, but none of them are actually about Stoicism. The Stoics taught that virtue and living in accordance with nature were the primary goals in life. One of the central tenets of Stoicism is the ideal of living in accordance with nature. This means accepting and adapting to whatever situation you find yourself in without complaining or resisting. For example, if you break your leg, it would be foolish to resist the fact that it happened and complain about your bad luck. Instead, you should accept the situation and focus on what you can control, such as how you respond to the injury and whether or not you allow it to define you. The Stoics also believed that emotions like anger and fear were obstacles to living a virtuous life. In order to achieve this state of emotional detachment, the Stoics practiced a form of meditation called negative visualization. You must understand that the Stoics weren't emotionless. They understood that emotions were a natural and necessary part of the human experience. Now, do you remember the movie Gladiator? The main character, Maximus, played by Russell Crowe, has just been betrayed by his emperor and is about to be killed. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, had a simple definition for negative visualization. Another way to practice negative visualization is to keep a journal of potential setbacks. We all know the popular saying, "The only constant in life is change." There's a Buddhist proverb that states, "All that we are is the result of what we have been." At the end of the day, we all want to live a life that we can be proud of, and that's it for today's video.